the Pentagon? Let's start there.
My time in the Pentagon is really where it's probably most relevant to our conversation today. Having worked on advanced technologies and coming up with new ways to field capabilities, primarily in response to the rise of China's threat to the United States, but also...
Brian Farris is currently the co-founder and CFO of Visto360.ai,
a startup developing groundbreaking computer vision platform technology.
He previously co-founded a revolutionary small radar satellite company
and is a retired U.S. naval officer with extensive experience in government and congressional affairs.
The minor successes we're seeing in fielding capabilities fast, such as what DIU's been able to do once they were funded, is still way too slow for what people operating forward need.
For the first time in our lifetimes, we don't have an advantage anymore. The drones have changed everything.
Drones are not just a soft kill problem. These trends worry me because there's also this reluctance that becomes imposed by bureaucracy and lawyers about what we should do in response.
Like, the point is, it's impossible to defend against this.
The drone wars have begun.
Man, it's great to finally have you on. You were supposed to be the first episode, but you dodged me.
I did not dodge you, Steve.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, this first podcast for me, man.
Better watch out. Don't say anything dumb. We fire off here too.
Oh, I'm full of shit and bad information.
All right, so why don't you give you're obviously famous, obviously, but why don't you just give the audience a little bit of your background? I think you started as a SWO. Is that right?
Yeah. No. First of all, thanks for having me. Sorry I dodged you in the first couple engagements, but really excited about what you're doing and what the company is doing at ACS, but also more broadly just this issue of drones and how we deal with them. So I have a weird background for most surface warfare officers in that after my Department of Tours, I came to Washington, D.C. for a one-year assignment, and the Navy made the mistake of sending me to Congress. So I like to say I have the D.C. hat trick. I spent some time in Congress. I spent a lot of time at the Pentagon, and then I concluded my military career at the National Security Council. So seeing the three elements is really unique. You talk to a lot of people in this town, and they have two parts of it. But having seen how each element works together really helped me in my transition out to retirement and starting my first company, now my second company. But my time in the Pentagon is really where it's probably most relevant to our conversation today, having worked on advanced technologies and coming up with new ways to field capabilities, primarily in response to the rise of China's threat to the United States, but also just looking at what was happening in the commercial sector relative to the threats being posed to our forces and trying to cross that divide.
Yeah. So in the Pentagon, let's start there.
Yeah.
What was the most fucked up part of it for you?
Look,
on the spot, boom.
Yeah, but I'd say this. So first of all, a lot of people that haven't spent time in the Pentagon don't understand how hard it is to get shit done.
Yeah.
And I have a great deal of sympathy for those that are serving presently and, frustrated by this gigantic bureaucracy. But there's a lot of great people working on hard problems. And for me, it wasn't necessarily anything truly, fucked up. It was just the chronic malaise of trying to field capabilities much more rapidly to people in need.
Yeah.
And there's a wide gap between the forces operating forward and those building the program, which is, DC lexicon for building a budget and a resource plan. And it's a very thorough process. So kudos to this thorough process that analyzes things from every direction. But as an entrepreneur that, an 80% plan violently executed quickly is going to yield much better results.
Well, we talk about this all the time, like when we're having beers and stuff, but like the threats are changing very quickly and we have a legacy process to do procurement. And so it can't necessarily keep up exactly with the threats. Right. And they're trying though. It's like, the people are all patriots. They all are trying to help, and they're just they see a lot of promising things, and they're just trying to figure out how to get the best ones out to the field. And so, I just think it's not really the people. It's sometimes the process that they inherit,
No, absolutely. It's a process problem enabled by some people, but in general, the vast majority of people are trying to do their best. And, there's been a lot of work done in the last 2 years about how to reform the process, if you will. But at the end of the day, the minor successes we're seeing in fielding capabilities fast, such as what DIU's been able to do once they were funded, is still way too fucking slow for what people operating forward need.
Were you working on, I think, cruise missiles, or what was the area you were really specialized in at the Pentagon?
Well, so the Pentagon, I had the really great fortune of working for a really visionary leader for 4 years named Bob Work. And, in 2014 to 2018, it was all China all the time, advanced capabilities, mostly in the classified realm, but then also starting to deal with the rising threat of drones and other cheaper weapons that were posing a really incredible threat to our military. So I was proud to work on some projects like establishing DIU, establishing the InQtel program with DoD, in which we were able to partner with InQtel and very quickly field, in 2015 timeframe, some really advanced artificial intelligence and analytics tools to find things in a country that were posing a threat to the United States. And like that whole effort of trying to introduce GPUs in 2015 to DoD was like incredibly frustrating, right? Because no one had ever heard of a GPU in 2015. Now they're ubiquitous, and the whole reason why we have this AI revolution is because compute. But you ask yourself, like, how many GPUs do you think the U.S. government owns or has fielded worldwide?
I don't know. 100,000?
I don't know for a fact, but it's probably zero.
Okay.
Right? I had the opportunity to go visit a Navy destroyer a few weeks ago in Norfolk, and I got together with the entire weapons and missiles team, and we're catching up about what's going on in the fleet. They just returned from the Red Sea, and I said, "Hey, I got a real stupid question. I've been away from the fleet for about 3 years. I haven't been on a ship in 3 years. How many GPUs do you guys have running your radar processing software?" And I got these like dumbfounded looks of like, "What's a GPU?" And in my mind, I'm like, this is a huge problem because, in an Aegis destroyer, you have one of the most sophisticated phased array radars in the world, right?
Yeah.
The spy radar is fucking amazing.
Yes, amazing.
Publicly, it can see a golf ball at 160 miles away.
It can do better than that, I bet.
Its compute, which is a function of performance, is 1990s, 2000s CPU technology with no adjuncts, no advanced processing. So this thing is an amazing system, but hardware-wise, for the electronics portion of it, it's stuck in the past.
Jack, can you pull up a picture of this? It's the Aegis?
The spy radar. Yeah, so there's 4 gigantic phase arrays, and behind that are some very complicated world-class electronics. But fundamentally, when the radar processor gets the signal, you're running it on 20-year-old compute architectures. There is no artificial intelligence being applied to this. And it's just shocking because every tactical radar in the fleet is kind of like this, where it's a really great system, but why don't we make what we have better? And it's like with the Allen Control. Every Navy ship has a bunch of 50 cal machine guns for force protection. None of them have a turret that can aim precisely and defeat threats. It relies upon a human.
Yeah. I mean, look, we talk about this all the time. Now that you've, obviously you did your time in government, you were a patriot who served the nation, and now you're on the other side doing entrepreneurship like me. And, we're here, one, because we want to help.
Absolutely.
But two, we do see the immense opportunity here. There's a huge disruption going on. There's massive technological change. There's opportunities to remake a lot of these weapon systems or to enhance them. And so, we talk about this all the time. Yeah, obviously the guns need to be able to hit drones. Maybe the radars need better compute. Like there's a myriad of opportunities that we're all looking
and
at
they have a marginal cost associated with them that's relative to new construction or procurement is way lower. They're already fielded. They have existing supply chains and logistics. It's like crows with the army. Reading about this attack overnight in Israel where I think 61 Israeli soldiers were injured.
Oh, did you see that? Yeah.
And several killed. And I think Israel has one of the most vaunted air defense and missile defense systems in the world.
I mean, this was just like a couple of days ago, right?
But this is counter drone is force protection.
It is 100%.
It gets wrapped up in military lexicon of air defense versus missile defense and different pots of money. But at the end of the day, our men and women that are serving forward are vulnerable. And, the cost asymmetry is such that you can't have the best counter drone system at every operating location unless you get to a price point that's way lower to field it as a force protection device in every remote weapon system.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Look at this shit. Yeah. So it's unclear if they actually killed any. Oh no, it says four deaths, 58 injuries, drone strike targeting army base in northern Israel. I mean, this is just going to become more and more common.
Oh, absolutely. And you're seeing in Ukraine where at the very lowest unit level, you need to have capability to defend yourself, and right now we don't. And the answer is not necessarily all this layered, complicated shit. It's fielding stuff that's relatively inexpensive, that uses modern technology in a new way to make what you have better, and you have a fighting chance. We still need to invest in things like short-range air defense systems. There's no doubt about that, but why we don't field these things more broadly and more quickly. But also, like we'll talk about Langley later, there's this whole notion of, and I don't know why this is, after what we've seen in the last several conflicts worldwide, drones are not just a soft kill fucking problem, right?
No.
Drones are not a soft kill problem.
They're not.
These trends worry me because there's also this reluctance that becomes imposed by bureaucracy and lawyers about what we should do in response, right? So jumping to Langley, this is one of the most sensitive Air Force bases in the world. It hosts, I think, half of our F-22s, which we're talking before we started. I think they're like the replacement cost is $350 million ballpark.
Yeah.
You lose one of those, you have an impact on your campaign.
Impact. I mean, I mean, you saw the nets they're trying to put over.
That's ridiculous.
This is their solution.
It's ridiculous. But then no one can get permission to attempt to jam this fucking thing.
I mean, the thing is,
it's ridiculous.
They should definitely try to jam it. I think that first of all, they're not even really sure where they're coming from. Like
right.
It's a why. I mean, if you read the story, read between the lines, like we don't really have a good sense of any of the drones in the airspace.
No, and it's so it makes you wonder, like what's going on in our national airspace. The Chinese balloon, a year ago or wherever it was, I think raised a lot of concerns across government. But the reality is, America's not prepared for this type of defense, and we're very vulnerable.
They call it. It's a little light on details. I know you probably have more, but we can't talk about it in depth. But just at a high level, let's just assume that there's a bunch of small drones surveilling this place right now, and the idea that they are going to put some nets up, they just fly under the nets. I don't really get that. I wasn't really sure what their plan is. My plan, we talked about this off air, but it was to move the F-22s to different places.
Yeah, and disperse them in some manner. And then I highlighted how you have centralized maintenance facilities that are very expensive to duplicate. It's a hard problem. And look, soft kill things like nets and EW are mildly effective. You need hard kill solutions across the United States. If they can do this at Langley, they can do it wherever they want. There's additional reporting about activities in proximity to the Nevada test range, also a very sensitive area.
Well, maybe it doesn't have to be a gun, but maybe we can start with some EW at least.
Well, no, I think that's a wrong approach.
Well, I mean, we could put the guns out there, but I mean, we are shooting inside of the U.S. border then.
It's a real simple thing to military people. Standing rules of engagement and rules of force, are issued and they're lawyered, and then you have an inherent right of self-defense.
Yeah.
There are many areas in the United States. There are national security areas in which the use of deadly force is authorized to protect these assets.
Well, we think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, so we're going to get something bad is going to happen, and then we're going to be more aggressive.
What do we got? 2 months before drone fleet emerged in Virginia, 5 mysterious drones reportedly breached restricted airspace over government nuclear weapons experiment site in Nevada. Yeah, I mean, look, it's everywhere. And do we know if this is a adversary or if this is our own civilian citizens?
That's right.
We don't actually know.
No, and there was in the story about Langley we were talking about, part of the reporting was a Chinese national who was a student at University of Minnesota who was operating a drone in proximity to HII, Newport News Shipbuilding, which, as you know, is a former nuclear power officer.
Yeah.
Some of our most sensitive technology is located in Newport News. A Chinese national was flying a drone around the yard collecting intelligence, and he was arraigned. I think he was actually not arraigned. I think he was tried recently.
Well, in that there's only a couple high value targets in that shipyard that if you hit, like we're out of shipbuilding capacity for a long time. As you know, I won't even say it on air, but
No, and look, we're not here to talk about shipbuilding, but we can't build the target every year that the government's paying people to build towards.
Well, to be clear, we're here to talk about anything. I even brought the stuffed unicorn.
All right,
we can talk about startups.
The unicorn creeps me out.
There's no. I bought this for my daughter, but
it's
nice.
Great.
Yeah, no, it's great for the table here because we're building a unicorn startup.
Well, I think you've built a unicorn startup already.
I mean, yeah, it's already. I mean, in my mind, it's already at unicorn values.
Certainly.
Yeah. But any topic goes here on drone wars. But yeah, the shipyards.
So think about that. We have an inability to meet production goals to replace submarines and at the right ratio and right rate. And you have a Chinese national operating a drone in close proximity that, through his own fault, in which he crashed into a tree, and neighbors observed this. It's the only reason why we even know he was down there doing this shit.
Yeah.
And I think similarly, and I have no idea if it's connected to the other stuff, but what I started asking myself is, what don't we know about? Because we have inadequate detection capabilities in the United States. We do.
100%.
The president of the United States, former president of the United States, Donald Trump, was attacked, attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania. The person who tried to kill him was flying a fucking drone at a high security site hours before this, and no one had a clue, right? So we can't track defense of HII Newport News, former president who's running for president. It's really this gigantic pervasive problem that's not going to be solved with multi-million-dollar radar systems and high-end capabilities. You have to take what we have, make it better, apply modern technology and software development practices, and do something, rather than spending billions of dollars on capabilities that are great, right? There's a lot of great capabilities being fielded, but schedule-wise and cost-wise, they're not sustainable.
Well, look, part of me, even what we're building, I think is just one of many solutions. I think that a lot of this reporting is in response to us being deep down kind of afraid as a country. Because for the first time in our lifetimes, we don't have an advantage anymore. The drones have changed everything. And I think that everyone's just kind of hoping. Actually, pull up the Wall Street Journal strike.
No, you're totally right. And as I was taught in the military, hope is not a course of action, right? It's not a fucking course of action.
Even the headline. Let's just break it down here.
It's sensational. It's ridiculous.
Why lasers could be kryptonite for drones. Again, we all want this stuff to be true. We want to have a solution. I think that's why they write articles like this. But as you and I know, we're going to break down this product in a second, but this is just not going to work. And we want it to work. We do.
And I think in limited use cases, it does work. But you add in weather, you add in power, you add in heat, dissipate, all this other shit that is very complicated. And our operating forces don't need more shit.
But add in
to cool
10 of these
power.
Coming out of Stryker. How are you going to stop 10 fast-moving DJIs from different directions with a laser? That's the problem. Let's just assume for a second that the laser does work. Okay. So, how many are you going to burn before the one hits your tank?
You're going to get hit in a multi-swarm scenario unless you have the ability to cycle through targets at a rapid rate. And the way that the laser systems and directed energy systems that are out there right now, I think that the nation should spend a lot of money on directed energy.
But this is the thing: I met the Blue Halo team, and I really like them. They're amazing, and this product actually is amazing. If you watch the videos, it's cool.
Oh, 100%.
The Stryker is sweet. That's not even the point. The point is, it's impossible to defend against this shit,
Right. There's too many, too numerous, and directed energy doesn't have the ability to take on multiple targets in any scenario right now.
And they're cheap enough that anyone can have them.
That's 100%.
And you don't even have to be a rich country anymore.
That's right. And that asymmetry and that cost effectiveness is what's deeply worrisome. And these statements of DE is only a couple bucks a shot. It's complete bullshit. It's not.
I think it says in there $3 a shot or something. And you were saying that. So
yeah. So it's sort of been the line forever when it comes to directed energy. And I remember my time in the Pentagon and the Navy staff where we were first. Some really smart people were working this 10 years ago, and they made some progress. They made demonstrable good progress. But at the end of the day, when you're claiming it costs 3 cents or $3 a shot, it's just not true. And I think it might be fully amortized, probably 2,000. Which that's a right direction.
Still pretty good.
No, it's terrific.
Yeah.
But then you start talking about small caliber, medium caliber weapons, and it's about $250, $500 an engagement. That's probably the best you're going to see for a long time.
Let's steelman lasers for a second. Let's do that. Okay, so what's great about it? One, it's not a bullet, so less collateral damage, maybe.
I think it's arguable.
But let's just say, what would they say?
So I think
let's be laser guys for a moment. All right.
Yeah. So I think the key advantage is that unit costs are generally lower than other kinetic solutions that defeat something.
So that's, no reloading, or I guess they don't have to reload.
But then when you start talking about, again, like when you're steel manning it, you have to it's got an endless magazine. Well, that's not true, right?
The battery.
Because I have no idea how the power is generated, or there's capacitor, whatever the fuck it is. But in general, it can do one engagement at a time. It's probably got to recharge. This thing is not cycling through targets at a rapid cyclical rate. It has.
You're a horrible steel manner.
Well, no, I was reading an article the other day about how steel manning is complete bullshit. That you should always be questioning.
I like it.
Arguments.
Right. No, you're right. And actually, in this case, I think it is. But I would say the one thing I like about them is probably that a bullet won't land in the neighborhood behind it.
Correct.
So, like, if you have a laser, you're shooting it straight out, it's going into the atmosphere. Not a bullet's not falling to the ground. That's probably the main. I think that's the main one. Now, however, in a war zone, that's kind of irrelevant. But
that also highlights, and when people criticize our military and the military-industrial complex, I think they're wrong sometimes because, look, the United States government and its support, its contractors really take safety, fratricide, extremely seriously, and to some degree, when you look at what's going on in Ukraine on either side, when you're fighting for your existence, some of these rules that we impose on ourselves really go out the window because you know what? It is tragic when there is a loss of civilian life. But if you're defending a nuclear submarine from being attacked by some drones and someone dies because they're in the downrange area, it's sad, but do you want to have this nuclear weapon blown up or attacked or what have you, or critical national assets destroyed? And then you have you get into the the utility argument of the costs, but until we're really under necessity, I think you'll continue to see more emphasis on directed energy as well as smarter weapons that equals more money. And again, I think directed energy has a big place to play, a big role to play, but you have to layer it. And
we haven't even got into the shielding, like the reflective coatings, things you can do against lasers.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things you can do to.
This obviously would get burned up by a laser off the shelf. It's just I
but
got this from Walmart.
But if you come up with some kind of spray that ablates the damage or some shit, there's a lot of different ways, and people are going to innovate rapidly. Unlike when you shoot something with a bullet that has a great deal of kinetic energy.
This isn't an ad for ACS, obviously, but
Yeah, but seriously, it's also the same thing to be said with some of the hit-to-kill interceptors that are coming out that are.
They got the Doug Bush quote in here. The old adage that lasers were 5 years from being amazing and always will be, that is changing.
No, I think nothing's changed. Yeah,
I think that it's probably not changing. Yeah, I think it's not. But again, in the purpose of steel manning it, I think the primary advantage is since these are going to be flying around in neighborhoods, it's a little safer than bullets. I think in some ways, I think that's the main. If we could get it to work, that's the main thing. I think. I
think you're right in terms of it.
That's why people like it. I'm trying to get down to the core, deep down. Why do people entertain directed energy?
Cheaper unit costs and
safety. I think safety.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right because also as you're beamforming the laser and you're energizing the target, the damage doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
Right. Where you shoot 20 rounds at a thing, and it's real, and it's going to have an impact.
I like to get down to the core essence of things on the pod, and I think that's it for me. Safety. So if they could get it to work, that would be amazing. Again, though, I just think overall, these articles are the reporter, everyone who's writing this article with this reporter, they're scared, and they should be. And we want a solution. I agree. Part of me is just maybe there's no solution, and you just got to make more drones. We just have to make more drones than the enemy. We had the Neros kid on.
No, and
that's his argument basically.
And I think I don't think he's wrong. I think they're doing great work. I'm mildly familiar with what they're doing, and I think they're right. Because when it goes back to safety as well, if you're able to use another kamikaze drone.
But did you see the Bolt, the Anduril?
Yeah,
let's pull up the Bolt.
That thing's sweet.
I mean.
And that's cool as hell.
This is what people don't realize, but so Swarm, is just a tactic. It's not a product.
Right.
Swarm.
Yep.
And so imagine a swarm of these.
I don't want to. Like, if I'm the enemy, I don't want to see that.
I mean, look at this thing.
No, it's really incredible.
Top attack right here. That's why we made Bullfrog be able to shoot straight up, because the top attack.
Yeah, and absolutely an elevation. And I remember when you guys did that feature of having the high elevation. It's because of these type of tactics.
I mean, imagine a swarm of these. Yeah. What are you gonna?
Well, and so
all you really need to do is imagine 9 of those coming out of Striker.
3.
3.
No, I'm serious.
I
Like,
mean,
you
I
have
say
a
9,
multi-axis attack, and it's over. Because, our very limited active protection systems that we field on some of our combat vehicles, I'm pretty confident don't have a they're not effective against top-down strikes. And we're investing money to fix that, but there's this really huge gap.
I'm making a call right now. I believe I'll go on record. This is going to be the highest revenue grossing product in Anduril's company history. I'm calling it. Like, by 10 years from now, this thing will have made the most money for this company by far.
I'm not sure. I think they've got a lot of stuff in there.
They have a lot of stuff, but this is what I would bet. Dude, this is devastating. This product is amazing. This is my favorite thing I've seen from the company. I mean, it's amazing.
No, it's very impressive.
What are you going to do against this thing?
And their marketing too is it's outstanding. Like, this is a great video.
I mean,
clearly identifies what it's doing, and that should scare the shit out of you, right? Like, I don't want that thing coming at me. I'm mowing my lawn, and that's what I'm also scared about. Is this shit getting out to civilians?
They have a lot of good stuff. They have the cruise missiles coming. They're maybe working on the CCA. They've got a bunch of other products like Pulsar. They got EW, but this is a step change in our capability. Before this product, we really didn't have anything like this in our country. We had a couple drone
we have some
companies.
systems out there that, and Anduril's finding it tough to compete. So Aero Environment makes a great system similar to this in terms of
you can pull up the Switchblade.
The effect, right?
Which one? Switchblade 300?
Yeah. And that's also a really capable system that's in serial production, a little bit larger form
this is
factor.
Different, though.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the difference in your mind between the Switchblade and the Bolt.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's different, personally.
Well, I think, or I know that Switchblade's a higher end capability, right? Longer range, faster, probably a larger warhead.
Yeah.
More sophisticated. But again, like, we get in this fight of good enough versus exquisite. I think the Anduril approach is, hey, this thing's fucking amazing. We don't need to spend 20% more time to make it, 7 decimal places accurate.
Yeah.
We can make it at cost or unit cost very effectively at decent volumes. Let's go.
Well, the Switchblade is like, probably like 100K or, 85, something like, I forget the exact price, but
I think
it's more expensive.
Yes.
But it goes further range.
Yep.
It would be called a loitering munition for lay people. That's like the term that we use.
Yep.
Versus the Bolt, which is, like an FPV drone.
Yep.
Which has a different, like, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Different user experience. Like, like the driving it,
certainly
setting waypoints. Mm-hmm. I've used the Switchblade UI too. You kind of have similar, but I think the Switchblade, one thing you can do is on the autonomy stack for it, you can like set a region where you want it to fly to, and then say like kill the highest value target there.
Yeah, and that's incredible.
And it will do that. I think that these FPVs will do that too. I'm not sure if Andor released that on the first go around, but obviously it's going to do the same.
Yeah, they're going to definitely move up that chain because
of the autonomy stack.
The software gets better and better over time, and I think both they and other actors such as Aero Environment are realizing, unlike the traditional primes, that their margins are in software development. Right? Hardware is a tough business. And I look through any of the large defense contractors.
Telling me about it, bro. Look at my hardware device.
Yeah. No, so like where do you make the profit? You make the profit in services and software.
Always.
But the traditional way of doing this, we need to talk about this because we haven't really talked about this.
Yeah.
The way that the large defense companies make software for the government is like 1980s process, right? You're hiring time and material where there's no incentive for you to make stuff better, faster, right? You're literally being paid to have as many people as possible that's reasonable working on software development. You have no incentive to finish, and like there's ways to incentivize people, but like compared to how you guys develop software, compared to how my company develops software, it's night and day. And it also leads to problems such as, some of the largest cost overruns. There's a lot of hardware issues there. But a lot of it also ties to when you have the integrator making the software and they're just paying, a legion of developers that have clearances, which is another challenge, to develop software on a time and material basis. It's time and money, and it usually leads to shit product because you're not under pressure of a fixed price contract, right?
Yeah.
Like, tell me what you want developed, and like we'll give you a bid, and then go do it. Don't change it a bunch, or we'll murder you with change orders. But right now, there's no incentive to move fast, right? You want change orders? Great. It's going to take another year. Don't blame us because, and rightfully, having been on the other end of a government contract where they wanted changes made, and it was not in their economic interest to do so, and it wasn't contracted, getting a change order is not that big of a deal, but it's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I think we have a big problem there too, where you pulled up the Assistant Secretary of the Army talking about DE transitioning from or transforming from 5 years in the future to different. He's also somebody who tells the world, we're going to develop software the way the Army develops software. If you don't want to bid on it, it's a free country.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, like very staggering because did you listen to anybody in the software industry say, we want to work for the Army. The way that you structure your contracts is not smart. There's a better way of doing it. And then you tell them basically, hey, if you don't want to bid on it, don't bid on it.
Yeah, because this is how we want to buy it.
Yeah, so it's like, okay.
It's just basically trying to say the customer's always right.
Which in this
Have you ever
case,
watched Mallrats? The
yeah.
customer's always an asshole.
Yeah,
Ben Affleck.
the customer's always right.
Customer is always right, obviously.
But when the customer may not know enough about a topic, despite having a lot of smart people advising them, because this shit's hard, and I'm not criticizing it, but like when you don't have somebody who has been on the outside developing software for commercial reasons and doesn't understand how you can do it totally differently, right? And the way that the government does, and look, there's a lot of places for hope, but in general, most software developed for the military or DoD is being developed in a time and material fashion that yields expensive, buggy software that's not nearly as good as it could be.
Well, you know what actually happens if you want to get into the details? Luke and I, so Luke, obviously for the listener, that's our CTO at ACS.
Yeah, he's the brains of ACS.
So we talk about this all the time.
you and Mike.
Yeah, I don't actually, I'm just the podcast guy, I do yoga and podcasts. So we talk about what actually happens here all the time.
That's going to be definitely edited out. I like that. What's Steve do? I do fucking yoga and podcasts.
That's not edited out. None of this has all been perfect. We're not editing anything.
Yeah, we're actually live.
Yeah, all of this is live.
Yeah.
So here's what happens though. And this happens at Northrop, it happens at all the primes, which is the engineers actually are just as good at programming as my engineers. But what happens is they get moved around a lot from project to project because of the way the government buys.
Yes.
And so they're not sticking on the same piece of code for years like my engineers are, because I keep my engineers on the same code without contracts because of venture funding.
That's right.
So they can't focus for a long period of time. It's actually counterintuitive. Like you would think, a bigger company can be safer and deliver on a longer time scale. Actually not, because they're moving all the pieces around like they're just widgets in a factory.
That's
but they're
right.
not widgets in a factory. These are real engineers.
That's right.
And so this is why the software development at the primes actually messes up. It's not because they're worse at programming. They're not. They're actually just
they're very, very talented people.
They're just getting whipped around by management because of the way of how the procurement works.
That's right, because there's no tolerance for you could be the most talented software developer in the world, and if you spend half your time on R&D and overhead, you're going to have a problem with management because they want you on.
Yeah, and so what happens is we tell them, like, if you come work at our startup, we'll let you work on the same piece of code for years. And it's refreshing because they've been on 19 projects in 18 months.
Right.
And they hate that.
Yep.
And so,
it's episodic. It's
and they want to, because like a real engineer wants to like build something great, and it takes time, and they don't want to get moved to a new project halfway through. And so that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Right.
And I agree with you 100%. Unless a project sucks, and they're like, yeah, I really want to work on this fun project. Yeah. That's the only exception. But in general, go end to end.
Yeah.
Which is, a attractive part of what you're doing and what other startups are doing is that you can, because you have some, private capital, you can be more tolerant of allowing R&D activities to take place without having to worry about your bottom line. because Northrop Grumman or Boeing or GD's, the way that they manage working capital is one, very impressive. But if you're not generating revenue as an individual, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? You could have a brilliant idea and need 6 months. Good luck convincing your people through multiple layers to dedicate the time to it. And that's partly because of the way we buy software. And it's changing in some areas, right? But in general, the vast majority is a time and material approach that, I don't know, it's just
I know.
tough.
One area I wanted to touch on with you is, so I'm doing a venture-backed startup in defense tech. We waste our money on podcast studios and golf and stuff. You are second time here, bootstrapping, one successful business before, now you're doing it again. Talk to a lot of our listeners actually are bootstrap entrepreneurs in defense. And so you've been through this before. You know what you're doing, and you've also been on the inside. Give me some advice for bootstrapping.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. And sincerely, I'm really fortunate. This company, the last company, founded with Ruben Sorensen, PhD nuclear engineering.
By the way.
Yeah, he's brilliant guy. But what most people don't know is we worked together for 5 years in the government. Basically our first
kind of like me and Luke.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in this case, instead of being in the bowels of naval reactors, he's got 20 years of service or so as a civil engineer, working for a visionary leader named Admiral Winnefeld, the vice chairman. I'm working for a visionary leader named Bob Work. We both had the same idea, and then we got put together, and it was like a startup, right? Because no one in the Pentagon wanted to do what we were trying to do, and we went through that process together. In some respects, got our asses kicked, but we're also successful to, I think to a pretty good degree. As a result of sort of not being able to achieve what we wanted to achieve in government, our first company, we went and did it. And it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Way harder.
Always is.
Way harder. And then, company two, kind of same thing. And you've known me for a while now. The first couple of years, there was also a bit of a storming and norming about what's our next thing going to be. And, every bit of advice you get is to bootstrap as long as possible. In our case, for company two, we have a terrific investor. The founder of Tenable is one of our angel investor. And, when you have somebody who is taking a company from founding to going public, just amazing experience to draw on.
Yeah.
And he's also a capital efficient guy because he's a COO. But, if you ask me what to do again, I don't think I'd ever do, I don't know.
You'd ride with me, of course.
Of course, because
in another timeline, we're riding.
Look, I have a view of it's really important, I think, for an early stage company to be capital efficient. But when you're onto something, you need to pour gasoline on that fucking fire and make it into a bonfire and make a really big company.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not big company, people wise, but big impact.
Yeah.
And I think what you guys have done is the right approach, where you guys bootstrapped it initially,
a little bit, yeah,
and
money,
financing it yourself, and bootstrapping to be the same kind of thing. You took a lot of risk, and then once you really had your arms around a product, you raised money, and now you're getting after it at a pace and tempo that's way faster than if you were going to bootstrap it.
Yeah.
So I think there's two messages in there. One, the hardest part is actually doing it, and then you realize, it's a lot harder than I thought. And you keep learning lessons. I have no finance background, but I went back to school for a year and got a master in finance, which changed my life, right? Because I came from the government. I thought I understood how government money works. And I think I do. But that has no application to how a business works and figuring out how to do these things. So I'll put it this way. I would never bootstrap a hardware company. It's impossible.
I mean, actually, I have this thing that I've been thinking about this a lot lately, which is VC backed versus bootstrapping is actually a false dichotomy. These are just capitalization strategies, I guess.
That's right.
What I actually think about it is you have the way I think about companies is you have your product, whatever that product is, and then you have where you think the market's going. And so in the future, that your product should fit in that market. And so you need to, depending on how fast you need that vision to happen, is how much money you might want to capitalize with. And then you're just trying to pitch investors on why it's smart. And it actually might be a situation where the future is not happening for a while. So you want to lay low and do it slower. Because there's the thing
and quietly.
You could be too soon,
Yes.
And so really, I like to ask Bootstrap VC because it's like a fun Twitter debate.
Yeah.
For the Twitter kids of like, oh, you should never raise or you should only bootstrap. But actually, it's just kind of a false dichotomy. It's just a question of business strategy.
You're right. And the way you
ways.
framed it, I think and I think it's very useful to the people listening about how it is a false dichotomy, because there's another course of action which is actually great too. I don't think they get enough credit, but AFWERKS is absolutely incredible about growing capability, fueling startups that are making meaningful shit and stuff. I'm sorry, making meaningful stuff and products for the military.
You can say shit. It's fine.
And,
my mom says not to cuss on the podcast, by the way. I told her to fuck off.
Oh.
She loves it, though. But anyways, the AFWERKS, actually, to interrupt you there, we talked about this before, but it's actually one of the, I think, more well-functioning programs for the defense tech ecosystem. It's incredible. They're deploying a lot of money into a lot of promising companies, and they're doing it well. And I think that you see a lot of other parts of the government trying to emulate what they're doing. They're catching up, but I think they were a little bit ahead of the curve by a couple years.
No, you're right. And I think, having been in the Pentagon when DIU was established, and then seeing the first couple of years of that development, where DIU is now taking off because they have the capital to go make investments.
Yeah, the first couple of years are a little bit wobbly.
Yeah, and look,
but I think they're getting it now.
Oh yeah, they're hitting stride because look, there's a lot of smart people there that didn't have any capital. Now they have resources from Congress, and they're doing so. What people don't realize is that AFWERKS, I want to say AFWERKS budget like $1 billion a year, and no one knew about it, right? So for a couple of years, it's kind of hidden because it was tied to SBIRs.
Yeah,
and really they got after addressing this, the perennial complaint of SBIRs, where they weren't transitioning enough into programs, and that's why I think AFWERKS is great, because when you work with AFWERKS, you have to have an end user. And for you to move forward and to receive any more investment or contracts from them, you need to have real buy-in from people that will write letters in a very formulaic response, which is good, saying, "Look, this is real. It's been tested. We want more of it."
Yeah, and they'll help you.
And they'll help you. And it's really kudos to whoever created it and who continues to sustain it, because I think the Air Force...
They should get a Nobel Prize for Defense.
Yeah.
They did it. They crushed it.
Yeah. No,
They should get the Unicorn Award.
That's right. No, I think they're well
The
past
AFWERKS
unicorn status.
Award. Yeah.
What will be the opposite?
Oh, you know what? I need to just have this like an anime shirt, or something like Palmer style.
No.
Okay.
Look, Steve. You have your own fashion sense. I think that the pink unicorn or the multicolored unicorn with silver shoes would be a great material for the next Allen Control System T-shirt.
I mean, we could just throw this down on the range and have Bullfrog shoot it. That'll be more. Maybe that's better. Just eliminate this thing.
No, I think it's a suitable mascot at this stage.
We can't harm animals. The Navy does enough harming of dolphins or whatever.
Oh, don't get me started.
No, we can't. No, we're not going to talk about that. That's for the next
episode. That is a slippery slope into not useful conversation.
So last topic though, no AUSA for you this year? Not even my party tomorrow night.
Well, no, I might stop by.
Come on, tomorrow. I know you're not trying to go out as much anymore, but tomorrow night.
Well, no, I'm also people don't realize I'm an introvert. Like going to AUSA for 3 hours, I need to charge. I need to charge up for a day because all the interactions.
Well, we're both very introverted. We're extroverted by our nature of being founders of our companies, and we have to be out there talking.
Right.
But we don't get. It takes a lot of energy.
And so for me, I'm at a point in my life where I've got to conserve energy sometimes.
Yeah.
And
because you're 38 now.
No, I wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
You're looking good.
If I was 38, I'd be at AUSA every day. No, sincerely, I think AUSA and all the big annual events are really awesome to go to, and just to walk around the floor and see what people are working on. Because there's so much great stuff happening. There's also some bad shit happening, but in general, there's a good energy.
Yeah.
So I'll probably stop by, and you guys are having a party, I'll stop by. But what we're working on is a very narrow field. There's probably some customer in the Army for us that would need this.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense.
But at the same time, my other co-founder, who's brilliant as well, we got invited to this Army ISR task force meeting where they're trying to get ideas from industry to basically modernize target acquisition. And we spend a lot of time. He flies out here, and he clearly has the best demonstration of the day, and there's no follow-up. So it's frustrating to go and engage with people.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And look, the onus is on us to follow up, and I'm a follow up type person. But you also get this point of like, you know what? There's other people in the military. Like I'm telling you right now, Air Force.
That want it.
As a Navy person, it pains me at times. The Air Force is way ahead of everybody else when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Yep.
Their aggressiveness in addressing the China threat. The Secretary of Air Force is a very impressive person. He was the Undersecretary for Acquisition Technology when I was in the Pentagon. And, a very seasoned executive, has a very clear vision for where the Air Force needs to go to confront China, talks about China all the time, because that is the challenge. And, he's harnessing some really good stuff to focus that entity. Whereas...
Well, the Navy talks about it. My sister's, she teaches at the War College, right?
Which one? At Naval War College?
At the Rhode Island one, yeah. And she's a commander.
What a great assignment.
And she says that, she's always talking about...
They wouldn't let me into Naval War College.
Well,
they sent me to a civilian institution instead. I love Newport, Rhode Island, but please.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so on holidays, at Thanksgiving, she's visiting, she always comes in, she's like, Stephen, this is the decade of consequence for China. That's what they call it. This is the decade of consequence. And they teach, she's teaching at the War College that China is getting ready to strike.
Right.
And obviously that's kind of a good thing. You want our Navy to be teaching that to, because whether they are or not going to attack, we want to be in a posture where they might, so we're teaching.
Right. We don't want to be in a position in which our Navy's smaller than theirs, which it is. We don't want to be in a position in which we're expending our most valuable precision weapons against a third-rate band of pirates in the Red Sea. Look.
I do kind of laugh, though, because she's like, they have a 100-year plan, which maybe that is true. And she's like, Stephen, they have a 100-year plan, and this decade is the decade of consequence. And
Yeah,
I was
like,
where did she get that from? And I asked her, and she says, well, we have people in the Navy that listen to Z's speeches. And he says it in the speeches. And then I'm wondering, are these Trump-style speeches where he's just saying bullshit? Or is it is it for real?
And look,
is it really the decade of consequence?
I'd put it this way. Our nation listens to what other foreign leaders say. We pay close attention, both publicly and privately. And I think that this whole notion of China having a decade of consequence, or that 2027 is the window of their opportunity, when you look back at how this notion was constructed, it's a couple former commanders of Indo-PACOM. I think first said 2027. I think it was Admiral
And
Davidson.
they're listening to speeches probably, right?
Yeah, and look, he's a commander of Indo-PACOM. He's traveling the region. He's talking to everybody.
Yeah.
He hears a lot of interesting insights from both allies and potential adversaries. And I think for that, that particular leader who's now retired, he had to have this animating concept of hey, people in Washington, D.C. are not fucking paying attention. And when you are able to then categorize it such as, decade of consequence, or 2027 is the period of vulnerability, it does motivate action because you have a timeline. Is that the right timeline? I have no clue. I spent a lot of time in government working on North Korea issues, and watched for a long time as policymakers and decision makers in Washington would sort of poo-poo the advances the North Koreans were making with solid rocket fuel motors.
Yeah.
The intelligentsia of DC is all making fun of the Chinese having a pier-side submarine sinking. Mm-hmm. And it's a tremendous setback to the Chinese.
Meanwhile, they have another 50,000 of them.
Well, no, my view is you know what? You know what happens when people fucking fail? They get better.
Yeah.
And everyone in Washington, D.C. is saying, oh, this is a good thing. It's a setback. No, it's a wrong thing. Not that I hope any mariner loses their life at sea, not in conflict. But if they had that mistake happen at sea and they lost the entire asset, that's truly a setback. But when you're pier side and maybe some sailor didn't set the right valve and you flood, you know what happens?
That's a gift.
It's a gift. And the same thing happened with North Korea. Everyone would pillory, oh, they just failed another launch. I'm like, no, you're taking the wrong lesson. They keep firing missiles. They keep not working every time they launch in general. It's all public.
Yeah.
In general, they go farther and they're more accurate. 10 years ago, it was they couldn't get past the Sea of Japan.
I know.
Now they're flying over Japan. Now they're flying to Guam. And we take this wrong lesson of, and again,
oh, they're stupid. They're just trying. They're not very good at this.
Right, and I can't stand.
That's cute.
I can't stand that fucking trope about fail fast. It's complete horseshit, to me at least, because in a bootstrap environment or even a fairly well capitalized environment, you can't fuck up too many times, right? The money's going to run out, The contract's going to run out. You have to ultimately succeed at shit. But when you're a nation state underwriting all this fucking development, look, the North Koreans are stealing more crypto on a daily basis to fund their rocket shit.
Is that for real?
Look,
That's a fact check, Jamie. Well, not now, but we're gonna fact check that.
there's no fact check needed. I'm look, it's all publicly available information. I'm not saying anything I wouldn't say publicly. But look,
Break out the joints.
Look,
We got the crypto fund in North Korea.
Where do
I know,
you
you're
think
right.
the
Seriously.
dollars come from?
I agree.
Or from the Russians because they're giving them 155,
Yeah.
or I'm sorry, their version of they don't shoot 155. Whatever the fuck the Russians shoot, it's worrisome.
I know. No, I get it.
And
I agree.
it's almost like we have this hubris of.
You're right. But the long story short is what you're saying is like these countries they're testing every month now. They're failing sometimes, but that we shouldn't be laughing at them.
No,
Because-
we should be doing more testing.
Yeah.
And all that shit.
Yeah, it's all coming. I know. Well, I think that we're going to have you on as a perennial guest. I think that we've got to get you as, at least every couple weeks down here as this all develops, bro. Because, I mean, you're terrific. We loved having you on.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll see you out there.
All right.